Hey guys, Crystal here. We are going to knit up this super simple chunky snood. It is a textured pattern that's really simple to repeat, and you can leave it long as a scarf, or you can seam it together to make a circle like an infinity scarf, snood, cowl, whatever your chosen words are. Okay, so to make this pattern, you're going to need some number 6 super bulky yarn. I used Lion Brand's Woolies Thick and Quick, a favorite. And you're going to need 2 balls here, which are 87 yards each. So if you're using another type of yarn, it would be, what's that? 174 yards of yarn. Number 6 super bulky weight yarn. Getting the same weight is important, although a different brand is fine. Then we're using 9mm US size 13 knitting needles. I use circular knitting needles. You don't need a cable this long for this scarf. You can use 16-inch cables or anything in between. Or straight needles will work for this pattern as well. It is worked flat. To get started, you can use any cast-on method for this pattern. I'll link up some easy cast-ons for you in the description. We are going to knit a flat rectangle that measures 8 inches wide by 60 inches long for this snood pattern. And you can make yours wider or narrower by casting on fewer or more stitches. You can cast on any number of stitches, but for the stitch pattern, you'll want to have an even number, so a number that you can divide by 2. For the length, you can also just adjust how many rows and add more or less. Remember, if you make changes, it'll affect how much yarn you use. Okay, so for this 8-inch wide snood, we are going to cast on 18. Now you can leave a long tail on the other side of your slip knot when you get started and use that to sew your ends together, or you can leave one at the end of your knitting if you've already cast on and left a shorter tail. Okay, so you need an even number or cast on 18 for this stitch pattern. This gives me a width of 8 inches. Okay, for row 1, we are going to knit the first stitch. And purl the second. Then I will repeat those 2 across. Knit 1, purl 1. Now we're at the end of the row, so we're going to turn our work. Now we're going to repeat row 1. So we start with a knit, and we're looking at a knit. So we're going to knit the first one, purl the second one. Then we repeat that across. Knit, purl. Continue to repeat knitting the knits and purling the purls. After row 2, turn your work. We're ready to start row 3. Now for row 3, we're going to start the opposite way with a purl first. And a knit second. So we'll repeat that across. Purl 1, knit 1. Here on row 3, we will be making a purl in the knit stitches and making a knit in the purl stitches. At the end of row 3, turn your work. And row 4 is a repeat of row 3. So we'll begin with a purl 1, knit the next, and repeat that across. Purl 1, knit 1. For row 4, we are purling the purls and knitting the knits. Okay, and those are your 4 rows you'll need for this stitch pattern. So now you're going to repeat rows 1 through 4 until your scarf reaches 60 inches long, and then we will sew it together next. Now once you have reached the length you need for your snood, 60 inches, you're going to want to bind off. We're not using any special bind off for this, so you can just use a regular basic bind off, and you can just do a regular knit bind off, or you can bind off in pattern. So if you bind off in pattern, you're going to start like what would be the next row, and in this case it would be row 1. So you would knit 1, slide that off into your right needle. Then in our pattern, our next stitch would be a purl. So we're going to purl 1, slide it off on the needle. Now we're using a regular bind off, so we insert our left needle into the first loop we made, pull it over the second, then I'm going to pull that stitch up a little so it's not too tight. Then we're going to continue working in pattern, binding off as we go. So our next stitch should be a knit 1, bind off, pull that up loose, purl 1, bind off, and just continue across the row like that. Okay, to sew the ends together, we're going to match up the short ends here, our first and our last rows. If you left a long tail when you started, you don't need to leave a long tail now. Either way, usually I go for twice the length of how much I want to seam when deciding how much to cut, plus 5 or 6 inches for weaving in the end. You'll need your large eye yarn needle for this. Just thread the end of that tail into your yarn needle, and then we're ready to sew. We're going to match up the ends and just go under both loops, weaving back and forth. You can also go under one loop of each, which gives you a little bit more stretchy join. So either way, with the super bulky yarn, if you go under both loops, it can be a bit bulky, but you won't notice it once it's all seamed up, so it's totally up to you. Okay, just like on the beginning, I'm going to go under both loops of both stitches on the end here, and then we're going to weave in our ends. You can see our join there, it's nice and flat. Flip it on the right side and you can't even see it. Now it's time just to weave in your ends here.